Bruce Lee's death on July 20th, 1973, in Hong Kong, at just 32 years old, created one of the most enduring cultural legacies of the 20th century. He was not only a martial artist, an actor, but also a global icon who changed cinema, popular culture, and the perception of martial arts forever. His passing came at the height of his fame, just before the release of Enter the Dragon, the film that would cement him as an international star. The shock of his sudden death left fans worldwide grieving, while his family was thrust into the position of safeguarding and continuing his legacy. At the time of his death, Bruce Lee left behind his wife, Linda Lee Cadwell, and their two children. Brandon, born in Oakland, California, on February 1st, 1965, and Shannon, born in Los Angeles on April 19th, 1969. Both children were still young. Brandon only 8 and Shannon 4 when their father died. The loss profoundly shaped their lives and ensured they would forever live under the shadow of their father's fame. For many fans, the children became symbols of continuity, living reminders of a man who had become larger than life. One undisputed fact is that Bruce Lee's estate and cultural influence expanded dramatically after his death, largely through the efforts of his widow Linda, and later his daughter Shannon. Enter the Dragon, released just 6 days after his death in Hong Kong, earned over $350 million worldwide when adjusted for inflation, introducing Bruce Lee's image to new generations. His face became a symbol of strength, perseverance, and rebellion against injustice, carried through posters, books, documentaries, and merchandise. His children were inevitably associated with that image, often appearing at commemorative events, in interviews, or in projects dedicated to maintaining his memory. A rarely discussed but documented detail concerns Bruce Lee's personal insistence on raising his children in the United States, despite his success in Hong Kong. After his own struggles with discrimination in America, he wanted Brandon and Shannon to grow up with broader opportunities, both culturally and professionally. In the early 1970s, he moved his family back to Los Angeles, even as he maintained his film work in Hong Kong. This decision, made only a year before his death, shaped the trajectory of his children's lives. Both were raised in the United States, educated in American schools, and immersed in Western culture, while still tied to their father's Chinese heritage. There remains debate among historians and biographers about the exact impact Bruce Lee's death had on the early upbringing of his children. Some accounts emphasize Linda Lee Cadwell's determination to provide them with a normal, relatively private life, despite the global attention. Others argue that the constant presence of Bruce Lee's legend, combined with media interest, created pressures that were inescapable. For Brandon in particular, early interviews suggest he resisted the idea of being defined solely as Bruce Lee's son, even as he pursued a career in acting and martial arts. Shannon has spoken in later years about balancing the burden of expectation with a sense of pride in preserving her father's image. The tension between privacy and public memory would follow both siblings into adulthood. The transition from Bruce Lee's own career to the lives of his children begins with Brandon, who grew up as the firstborn son of a cultural phenomenon. His short but impactful life would intertwine both the promise of a new career in Hollywood and another tragedy that mirrored his father's sudden death. Linda Lee Cadwell was born Linda Emery on March 21, 1945, in Everett, Washington. She met Bruce Lee while a student at Garfield High School in Seattle, where Bruce had given martial arts demonstrations. They married in 1964 and had 2 children together, Brandon, born in Oakland in 1965, and Shannon, born in Los Angeles in 1969. Both were born during the years when Bruce was still struggling to establish his acting career in the United States. Their early childhood was marked by frequent moves between California, Seattle, and eventually Hong Kong, where Bruce returned in 1971 to pursue film roles that Hollywood had denied him. The family was living in Hong Kong at the time of Bruce Lee's sudden death. Brandon was 8 years old and Shannon was 4. After his passing, Linda chose to return to the United States with her children. She settled in Seattle before later moving to Los Angeles. This ensured that Brandon and Shannon would be raised in American schools and somewhat shielded from the overwhelming media presence in Hong Kong. An undisputed fact is that both children pursued education in California before later entering the entertainment industry. Brandon attended Chadwick School in Palos Verdes and later studied at Emerson College in Boston and the Lee Strasberg Theatre Institute in New York. Shannon attended Chadwick as well, later graduating from Tulane University in New Orleans with a degree in voice. Their education, while varied, reflected both their mother's desire for stability and their own interest in the arts. A lesser-known but well-documented detail is that Brandon, during his college years, briefly worked behind the scenes in theatre productions before deciding to step in front of the camera. Shannon, on the other hand, initially studied music rather than film, and her early pursuits leaned more toward performance arts outside of martial arts cinema. These early choices reflected attempts by both siblings to define themselves outside the martial arts world that had been so thoroughly associated with their father. There has been debate over the degree to which Linda actively encouraged or discouraged her children from following Bruce's path. Some biographers, citing her memoir, Bruce Lee, The Man Only I Knew, published in 1975, argue that she wanted Brandon and Shannon to build their own identities rather than feel trapped by comparisons to their father. Others suggest that by authorizing projects such as the 1993 film Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, and supporting Brandon's acting career, she acknowledged that their father's legacy was both a burden and an opportunity. Linda herself has stated in interviews that she sought balance, protecting her children from exploitation, while also ensuring Bruce's philosophy and contributions were not forgotten. By the 1980s, both Brandon and Shannon had entered the entertainment world. Brandon began appearing in martial arts-themed television productions in the United States and Hong Kong, while Shannon took smaller roles and stage opportunities before moving toward acting and later producing. Their early careers represented the beginning of two distinct paths, both inevitably connected by their father's name. The next chapter in this story belongs to Brandon, whose life trajectory, career breakthroughs, and tragic death in 1993 would leave a lasting imprint on the Lee family legacy. Brandon Bruce Lee was born on February 1, 1965, in Oakland, California, the first child of Bruce Lee and Linda Lee Cadwell. From the beginning, he lived under the glow and burden of his father's fame. As a young boy, he spent part of his early childhood in Hong Kong, where Bruce Lee's stardom was exploding. Photographs from the early 1970s show Brandon at his father's side during premieres and public appearances. Though still too young to fully understand the cultural phenomenon surrounding the Lee family. After Bruce Lee's death in 1973, Brandon's life shifted back to the United States, where Linda sought to provide him with a more stable environment. He attended Chadwick School in California, where he developed a reputation as energetic, witty, and restless. Teachers and classmates recalled that Brandon wrestled with the heavy expectations that came with being the son of a global icon. One undisputed fact is that Brandon pursued a professional acting career in the 1980s, working his way up from smaller television projects to major film opportunities. His early work included a role in the 1986 television film Kung Fu, the movie, where he played the son of David Carradine's character. He later appeared in Hong Kong action films such as Legacy of Rage, 1986, which showcased his martial arts skills while introducing him to international audiences. By the early 1990s, he was working steadily in Hollywood, appearing in Showdown in Little Tokyo, 1991, opposite Dolph Lundgren, and Rapid Fire, 1992, a martial arts thriller that gave him his first lead role in an American production. A lesser-known detail about Brandon's career is his reluctance to be typecast solely as a martial arts star. In interviews, he emphasized his love for acting and expressed a desire to play dramatic roles beyond action films. Friends and colleagues noted that he was deeply interested in storytelling, writing, and directing. His decision to accept the lead role in The Crow was influenced not just by its action sequences, but by the film's gothic narrative and emotional depth. Brandon reportedly saw the role of Eric Draven as a chance to prove himself as a serious actor, not only as Bruce Lee's son. The most debated and tragic point of Brandon's life is his death during the filming of The Crow. On March 31, 1993, while filming in Wilmington, North Carolina, Brandon was fatally wounded by a prop gun loaded with improperly prepared blanks and dummy cartridges. He was 28 years old. His death shocked Hollywood and reignited discussions about on-set safety protocols. Investigations by law enforcement ruled the shooting accidental, though debates persist about whether negligence or deeper failures in production oversight were to blame. Some accounts, including official reports, emphasize a chain of technical mistakes. Dummy rounds left in the chamber, combined with a blank cartridge, created a deadly projectile. Others have pointed to the intense pressures of low-budget filmmaking, where safety standards were sometimes compromised to save time and money. The tragedy drew eerie parallels to his father's sudden and premature death 2 decades earlier, amplifying the sense of loss felt by fans around the world. Brandon's funeral took place on April 3, 1993, at Lakeview Cemetery in Seattle, Washington, where he was buried beside his father. The service was attended by family, friends, and industry colleagues. His fiancée, Eliza Hutton, who had planned to marry him later that year, became one of the central voices pushing for stronger gun safety regulations in film production. The release of The Crow in May 1994, completed with the use of body doubles and digital effects, became both a critical and commercial success. It grossed over $90 million worldwide and turned into a cult classic, ensuring that Brandon's work would not be forgotten. His performance was praised for its intensity and vulnerability, marking him as a promising star whose career was cut tragically short. The focus of Bruce Lee's legacy shifted after Brandon's death. His sister Shannon stepped forward as the surviving child, balancing her own career while taking on the role of steward for the family's cultural and business legacy. Shannon Emery Lee was born on April 19, 1969, in Los Angeles, California, the second child of Bruce Lee and Linda Lee Cadwell. Just 4 years old when her father died, her earliest memories of him were limited but powerful, shaped not only by personal recollections, but also by the global reverence that surrounded his name. Raised in the United States, Shannon grew up under the same weight of expectation that had followed her brother Brandon, though she pursued her own distinctive path within the arts and entertainment world. One undisputed fact is that Shannon Lee became both an actress and producer, while later assuming the role of chief representative of the Bruce Lee family legacy. She studied voice at Tulane University in New Orleans, reflecting her initial interest in music. After graduation, she pursued opera training in New York City before shifting toward acting in the 1990s. Her film appearances included Dragon, The Bruce Lee Story, 1993, where she had a cameo role in the biographical movie about her father, and Cage the Seku, 1994. She also appeared in the 1994 television series Kung Fu, The Legend Continues, and starred in Enter the Eagles, 1998, a Hong Kong action film. A lesser-known but documented detail of Shannon's career is her involvement in music before she became fully committed to acting and producing. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, she performed with a Los Angeles-based band called The Wills, which blended pop and alternative rock influences. Although short-lived, this period highlighted her willingness to explore creative outlets outside the martial arts and film world. Her decision to leave the band reflected a broader desire to connect with her family's legacy through media rather than music. The most debated element of Shannon's career and public role concerns her stewardship of the Bruce Lee estate. After Brandon's death in 1993, Shannon gradually assumed responsibility for protecting and expanding her father's image. She became president of the Bruce Lee Foundation, which was formally established in 2002, and took on oversight of licensing, merchandising, and film projects connected to her father. Some commentators have praised her for successfully modernizing Bruce Lee's image and ensuring that his philosophy of self-expression reached new audiences. Others have criticized certain commercial ventures as overly focused on profit rather than authenticity. For example, collaborations involving Bruce Lee's likeness in video games, streetwear, and advertising campaigns have occasionally drawn criticism from fans and cultural historians who argue that such uses dilute his philosophical message. Shannon, however, has maintained that expanding her father's presence in global culture is part of keeping his memory alive. Beyond commercial management, Shannon has overseen projects designed to preserve Bruce Lee's intellectual and philosophical contributions. She executive produced the 2009 documentary How Bruce Lee Changed the World and the 2011 Chinese television series The Legend of Bruce Lee. She has also served as a producer on Warrior, a television series that premiered in 2019, based on original ideas Bruce Lee had developed in the early 1970s. The series was widely praised for both its action and its exploration of Chinese-American history, showing how her father's creative vision continues to resonate decades later. Shannon has also written about her father's teachings. Her 2020 book, Be Water, My Friend. The Teachings of Bruce Lee presents his philosophy of adaptability and self-mastery for a modern audience. The book received attention for its direct use of her father's notes, letters, and journals, combined with Shannon's reflections on applying those lessons in contemporary life. This literary work marked a continuation of the Lee family's role not only in entertainment, but also in cultural philosophy. In her personal life, Shannon married Ian Kiesler in 1994, and the couple has one daughter, Ren, born in 2003. Unlike her mother and brother, Shannon has remained highly visible in the media, often attending commemorative events, speaking at universities, and representing the Bruce Lee Foundation at global conferences. The transition from Shannon's stewardship leads naturally to the role of Linda Lee Cadwell, who, after experiencing the deaths of both her husband and her son, eventually chose a quieter life. Her influence on how Bruce Lee's children navigated their paths cannot be overlooked. Linda Lee. Cadwell's role in shaping both the private lives of her children and the public presentation of Bruce Lee's legacy was profound. Born in 1945, she became Bruce Lee's widow at just 28 years old. Suddenly responsible for raising two young children while also confronting the global fascination with her late husband, she balanced grief with determination. In the years immediately following Bruce's death, Linda made decisions that would affect how both Brandon and Shannon were raised, and how their father would be remembered. One undisputed fact is that Linda authored Bruce Lee, The Man Only I Knew, published in 1975. The book became a widely read memoir, offering one of the first inside perspectives on Bruce Lee's life and philosophy. It served as the foundation for the 1993 feature film, Dragon, The Bruce Lee Story, in which Lauren Holly portrayed Linda and Jason Scott Lee portrayed Bruce. This memoir and its adaptation ensured that Bruce Lee's story was accessible to a wide audience, while also framing him through the lens of his family's experiences. A lesser-known detail is that Linda returned to teaching after Bruce's death, resuming her career as an educator in the 1970s. She sought to provide a sense of normalcy for her children, even as she managed the growing demands of the Lee estate. Later, she pursued graduate studies and earned a master's degree in education from Antioch University. This emphasis on education influenced both Brandon and Shannon, who followed diverse academic paths before entering entertainment. The debated aspect of Linda's public role centers on her handling of Bruce Lee's intellectual property and estate during the decades before Shannon assumed control. Some biographers have argued that Linda sought to shield her children from the pressures of celebrity by controlling licensing deals conservatively. Others have suggested that the estate's commercial potential was underdeveloped until Shannon took over in the early 2000s, when the Bruce Lee Foundation began expanding the brand globally. Supporters of Linda's approach emphasize that she prioritized dignity and preservation over profit, while critics argue that opportunities to advance Bruce Lee's philosophy were missed during those years. In her personal life, Linda remarried twice. In 1988, she married Tom Bleecker, a writer, though the marriage ended in divorce within a year. Later, in 1991, she married stockbroker Bruce Cadwell, with whom she has lived since. Following Brandon's death in 1993, Linda largely stepped back from public appearances, allowing Shannon to assume the role of spokesperson for the family. Interviews from the late 1990s and early 2000s show Linda reflecting on the difficulties of losing both her husband and her son, while expressing pride in Shannon's stewardship of the family legacy. Today, Linda lives quietly in Idaho with her husband Bruce Cadwell. While she occasionally participates in commemorative events, her public presence has diminished significantly compared to earlier decades. This retreat from the spotlight contrasts with Shannon's active engagement in preserving and expanding the Lee legacy. The story of Bruce Lee's children and widow converges in the broader legacy management of the Lee estate. The foundation, licensing, and cultural impact remain active, reflecting how Bruce Lee's influence continues to be shaped not only by his own work, but also by the stewardship of his surviving family. By the early 2000s, the preservation and expansion of Bruce Lee's legacy had become the central responsibility of Shannon Lee and the institutions she built around her father's name. The most prominent of these is the Bruce Lee Foundation, formally established in 2002. The organization began as a non-profit devoted to sharing Bruce Lee's philosophy, supporting martial arts education, and promoting cultural understanding. Shannon took the role of president, guiding its activities and ensuring that her father's teachings remained relevant in the 21st century. One undisputed fact is that the Bruce Lee Foundation continues to operate today, with programs ranging from youth scholarships to community martial arts initiatives. It also manages exhibitions such as Bruce Lee, Kung Fu, Art, Life, which toured internationally, and maintains archives of Bruce Lee's personal writings, training notes, and correspondence. These efforts have allowed researchers and fans alike to gain deeper access to primary sources, rather than relying solely on legend or myth. A rarely discussed detail involves the legal complexities surrounding Bruce Lee's image rights in the decades after his death. In the 1980s and 1990s, unauthorized merchandising and unlicensed films proliferated, particularly in Asia. Shannon, after taking control of the estate, pursued legal action to protect the family's intellectual property. One notable case came in 2009 when the Bruce Lee Enterprises, the company managing his likeness, sued against unauthorized use of his image by certain Chinese companies. These legal battles underscored the enduring value of Bruce Lee's name and the challenges of preserving his legacy in a global market. The most debated aspect of the modern Bruce Lee legacy concerns the balance between authenticity and commercialization. On one hand, projects such as the television series Warrior have been praised for finally realizing Bruce Lee's original vision of telling Chinese-American stories through action drama. On the other hand, partnerships with major corporations for apparel, video games, and advertising campaigns have raised concerns that his philosophy has sometimes been overshadowed by brand expansion. Supporters argue that reaching mass audiences through commercial products keeps his image alive for new generations, while critics caution that excessive commercialization risks reducing his legacy to mere iconography. The estate's efforts have also extended to film and digital media. Documentaries such as I Am Bruce Lee 2012 and ESPN's Be Water 2020, both supported by Shannon and the Foundation, presented intimate portraits of Bruce's life and philosophy, offering context for his martial arts innovations and cultural challenges. These projects reflect an ongoing commitment to presenting Bruce Lee not just as a fighter or actor, but as a thinker whose ideas on identity and adaptability remain widely cited. In the realm of personal family legacy, Shannon's daughter, Ren Kiesler, represents the next generation. Born in 2003, Ren has occasionally appeared alongside her mother at Foundation events, though she has not pursued public roles comparable to her uncle or grandfather. Her presence, however, symbolizes continuity, extending the Lee family into the 21st century, while maintaining ties to its origins in Hong Kong and the United States. Through the Bruce Lee Foundation licensing rights and cultural projects, the family has ensured that Bruce Lee's influence has endured across 5 decades. Statues in Hong Kong, exhibitions in Seattle, and tributes in global media continue to reaffirm his place as a symbol of cross-cultural identity. His children, Brandon through his brief but impactful acting career, and Shannon through her sustained guardianship of his estate, have defined how his name lives on. The story of Bruce Lee's family does not end with individual biographies, but continues through the structures that manage his memory and philosophy. From Linda's early memoirs to Shannon's modern foundation, the family has remained central to keeping Bruce Lee present in both popular culture and philosophical discourse. The fate of Bruce Lee's children reflects both the fragility and endurance of legacy. Brandon Lee, whose career promised to carry the Lee name into a new generation of film, died before realizing his full potential. His tragic passing in 1993 echoed the shock of his father's death, reinforcing the sense that the Lee family story was marked by brilliance, interrupted too soon. Yet his work in The Crow remains celebrated, ensuring that his artistry, like his father's, would not be forgotten. Shannon Lee chose a different path, one defined less by cinematic stardom and more by stewardship. As an actress, producer, and author, she honored her father's contributions while ensuring his philosophy was accessible in modern forms. Through the Bruce Lee Foundation, she built institutional structures to preserve his writings, expand his cultural presence, and defend his image legally. Her work reflects a deliberate, measured effort to balance authenticity with global influence. Linda Lee Cadwell, who endured the loss of both husband and son, ultimately stepped back from public life. Her memoir and guidance shaped the early decades of the estate, but her later retreat to private life underscored her desire for peace beyond the spotlight. Today, the Bruce Lee legacy is not only about films or martial arts, but about resilience across generations. It encompasses Brandon's brief but powerful film career, Shannon's ongoing cultural stewardship, and the quieter strength of Linda, who navigated the most difficult losses a family can endure. The family's efforts have ensured that Bruce Lee remains more than a cinematic icon. He endures as a philosopher, cultural bridge, and symbol of self-expression, whose children, each in different ways, carried forward his name.